Dr. Winnie King, and I'm here with some leading experts on grieving in the lobby of the Children's Hospital in Montefiore in New York City. So you may hear some noise in the background. You know, we all want to protect our children from the sadness of losing someone they care about, but most of them will experience the loss of a loved one at some point. Today we're going to tell you how to get your kids through that kind of loss. We begin with one of the most difficult, the death of a parent. Meet the McKenna family, whose husband and father, Frank, died 4 years ago from a stroke.
I met Frank. I was working at the post office. One night we went out for a drink after work, and the rest is history, and we fell fast and furious for each other. We got married real quickly, and then we had Shannon the next year, and Patrick the year after that. It was just a whirlwind kind of marriage. And so we were only together for about 8 years before he died.
When he had the first stroke, he was with her up in the bedroom, and I guess she said that he was acting funny.
Yeah, he said his hip hurt and to get my mom.
She was calling me, and of course not knowing what was happening, I'm like, yeah, hang on, be right there. And so when I came over, she said, Mom, Dad's talking funny.
I have felt guilty because when I first came to say good morning to him, he told me to hold his hand, but I just ran away and went to my mom. And after that, for a long time, I felt like I was the reason he died, just because I didn't hold his hand.
And Patrick kept asking questions about how we can bring him back to life. You know, can't you kiss him like in Sleeping Beauty?
Sometimes I blame it all on the doctor. I go, why couldn't they be better? Why couldn't they save him? And then I think most of it's his fault, like God's fault. And it's just like horrible for me to think that.
I know I was angry at the beginning, very angry at the world, at people. Bringing the kids to school, the first day of school, standing there with all the other parents was so hard for me. Some days I was just crying so hard I couldn't go up there. One time I got my sister to go for me. One time I just walked into the nurse's office and asked her just to send Patrick down because I couldn't deal with standing around these other parents that were so normal and I wasn't and we weren't. And
I think it's harder if you're younger because you have less memories and it can slip away from you. Like sometimes I just forget what he looks like or how he sounded. So sometimes I have to listen to tapes of him or just stare at his pictures for a long time. I want him to be there. I'm so angry at that. That's the life cycle and that it's gonna happen to everyone sometime. So I'm mad and it's just hard.
Well, I know it's so hard. Thank you so much for being willing to come and talk with us today. And Tricia, how has Frank's death affected your family?
Well, you know, we're angry a lot and we fight a lot. You know, Frank was the clown, the catalyst. And so if the kids get upset with me for some decision I've made, you know, they don't have him to go to turn to. I don't have him to turn to if I have some decision that I'm, you know, questioning what I should do and ultimately make it myself. So, and I don't think we connect with people the same way because we're different. It seems like everybody else is normal and they don't understand.
Right, so you kind of close yourself off a little bit.
Yes, I have. Yes.
Shannon, do you worry about your mom and your brother and your sister?
I do. I actually think that someday they'll get in a car crash and that they'll die, and I wonder where we would go because, like, it's just so sad to lose another parent after one's death.
Sure. Well, I can certainly understand that. Dr. Phyllis Silverman and Linda Goldman are experts on children's grieving. And Phyllis, what happens to a family when a parent dies?
Well, I think the most dramatic way of putting it is that everything has changed. Nothing is the same. People are dealing with feelings that they had no experience with before, especially the children. Their daily routine is disrupted. The sense of certainty that they had with the world is gone. They have certain financial stress. Depending on who was the breadwinner in terms of the health insurance, there's that kind of an issue comes up all the time. And people generally feel as if the world will never be the same, and it probably won't. And the question is, how do you deal with that?
And how much do you share
change?
with children, too? Because, as you mentioned, the financial stress can be huge. It can change everything. But how much of that do you share with your children?
Well, I think you have to try to share with them as much as they understand. Children understand much more than we give them credit for, and they're liable to ask, well, can I go to school tomorrow? Who's going to pay for the rent? Can we stay in this house? Yeah. But if you can be honest with them and point out to them how you will manage and tell them something about the family's economic situation, the emotional situation, then they can also share with you their feelings. Because I think what you soon discover if you listen is both parents and children have feelings that they may try to protect each other from.
Sure,
and
sure.
That doesn't help either of them.
Right. Well, Linda, what exactly do children understand about death at different ages?
Well, at a very young age, we can explain to children that death is when the body stops working. Between the ages of 0 to 2, infants and toddlers may believe out of sight, out of mind, but they can still feel a loss and be frustrated by it. In the ages of around 2 to 7, it's usually marked by causality and magical thinking. It can be huge for the grieving child. When a boy screams at his brother, "I hate you, I wish you were dead," and then the next day he's killed, he feels his words caused that death. He also believes death is reversible, and he sends a letter to his brother and waits for a response. But by the ages of 7 to 12, kids realize that death is not reversible. They want to know the facts about their person, and they begin to form their own spiritual belief system. By adolescence, teenagers can become very self-absorbed, and they think death is far away, but yet it's a good time to create a peer support group.
Well, what kinds of reactions can parents expect kids to show them?
Well, some normal reactions might be sleeplessness, loss of appetite, bad dreams, stomach aches, headaches, even anxiety. Some children say that they worry excessively about their own health or the health of a surviving parent or guardian. Some children may become the class clown or the class bully. As Shannon shared a common thought, that sometimes they feel it's God's fault that their person died. And some kids believe that when they see a breeze go by or a butterfly, it can be a sign from their person. One little girl thought that butterflies marked were a message from Mom, and Dad honored this by making her a butterfly necklace.
Oh, well, that was a great way of helping her through that.
Yes.
Phyllis, I know that parents often wonder if they should mention the deceased or not. Is it a good thing, a bad thing?
Oh, I think it's a very important thing. The child wants to understand that this was someone the parent cared about as much as the child did, and that the loss is as real for both of them. But it's very important to remember. We live in a world where we've often told people, put the past behind you. Are you still talking about him 3 months later? In terms of timing after a death, that's sort of like, it's still unreal.
Sure.
And it becomes very important for them to be able to remember, to talk about, and to keep that person's presence, spirit, the feeling that that person communicated to the family present for everybody.
Well, a child starts to cry all of a sudden.
Mm-hmm.
You know what it's about. How do you react to that?
You comfort the child. You acknowledge the child's sadness. You try to get the child to perhaps put the tears to something about the death or the sadness, and to not act as if the tears came out of the clear blue sky.
Sure.
And you share with them that sometimes that's how you feel.
Well, and speaking of that, Tricia, we heard her talk about how sad she felt going to the school, just sort of bringing back all those memories.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have feelings where you're going to want to cry. I mean, it's just going to come up in you. Can you do that in front of your child?
Well, I think that the child is better off, and so are you, if you don't try to protect them from that. Parents intuitively, maybe not intuitively, instinctively, or in some way, I'm not sure what it is, want to protect their children, and so they think that if I cry, it will upset the children. But it may reassure the child. The issue is really not to burden the child with their having to fix the parents' tears, with their understanding that it's not their fault, but that this is something that they both share, and that it's okay to cry.
But not to fall apart. You don't want to cry to the point where you give the child the impression that you're out of control.
That you're out of control and that they may have to help you to maintain control.
Well, Linda, what about the funeral? Because this is a tough time for the surviving spouse. You know, you're so caught up in your own emotions. How do you deal with kids with this? Do you let them go, or should they not go? Is it too upsetting for them?
Well, I think children can benefit by going to a funeral if they're prepared, invited but never forced, and given choices. This way they get to participate in the process, they get to honor their person, and they get to say goodbye. Kids can have different reactions, and they're all okay. Sometimes kids might walk up to a casket, look inside, leave a picture, dance around it, or not get near it. As you said, some parents might be in so much grief themselves that they're not able to attend to their children's immediate needs. They can ask another adult ahead of time to be prepared if that child needs to leave, take them out, blow bubbles or draw pictures to help them remember their person.
Yeah, so it's good to think about this in advance.
Absolutely.
And assign someone who could be responsible for the child so that you can deal with the event in your own way without having to worry about the child as well.
Yes, and that person is prepared as well.
Well, you know, support groups are an excellent way to help children work out their feelings about death. And these groups can provide a safe space for kids to learn from their peers. And we visited one in Arlington, Massachusetts called the Children's Room.
What fears or worries do you have now that someone has died? That someone else in my family might die.
Yeah.
I worry that I'm going to be an orphan.
You worry they're going to be an orphan? Yeah.
The Children's Room has just really, I think, helped all my children deal with their grief in a way that if we did not have the Children's Room, we'd be wandering around like zombies.
My dad liked to draw and paint, and I thought that was really inspiring because now I draw all the time. When I'm missing my loved one who died,
I like to wear my dad's hats.
My dad, I like to wear his sunglasses.
Yeah, here at the Children's Room, like, you don't have to share, you don't have to talk if you don't want to. We kind of just do activities that keeps them on our mind, but, you know, keeps us occupied at the same time, so we don't have to dwell on the sadness and the hurt that you feel.
Then I'm going to turn it into a necklace.
But who, you?
Yeah.
So you say your dad taught you how to play basketball?
Yeah.
There you go.
Did anyone else in your family play hockey?
My brother Glenn played hockey for a little bit, and also my dad played when he was younger.
There you go. That's it. And hit it as hard as you want. This is a safe place to do that. As hard as you want.
Well, that really shows the extent and the intensity of the emotions. Shannon, how did the Children's Room help you?
Well, it helps me by, like, we're near other children that have lost a loved one, and that really helps because you know that you're not, like, it's like you're one, like, different thing in your school, but there you're, like, all the same, and you can talk to them about it, and they'll understand.
Yeah, that's a good feeling to be around someone that's been through what you've been through. You know, Phyllis, in helping kids, you talk about the 3 C's, connection, continuity, and care. And we've talked a little bit about connection. What about continuity and care?
Well, I think one of the things that we forget is that children don't always know that the sun will shine tomorrow. And when their world has fallen apart with the death in the family, especially of a parent, then they don't expect that there will be that kind of continuity. And so people have to reassure them. As adults, we certainly have enough trouble with that. How can the world go on? How can you act in a normal way? And so for children, it's even more important. The other part is, in terms of care, is that children need to feel secure. I think that the point that Shannon made, that there are other children like themselves with whom they can make a connection, that also becomes very important. And to know that there is a certain security in the family, that they will be fed, that they will have a roof over their heads, and that their parent will take good care of themselves, so that
they'll be around. Well, let's talk about teenagers, because teenagers are teenagers, you know, and a lot of times they're somewhat resistant to any sort of outside help. How do you deal with teens in a situation like this? Do you encourage them to go to support groups? What if they won't go?
I think that parents can tear their hair out trying to have children do something they don't want to do. And if you really respect your child and can hear them, then you have to wait. And when the child is ready, they will do what they want, what they need to do, and what is appropriate for them. There's no magic in support groups.
Yeah.
Very often, when you start to talk to children or to teenagers in particular, you discover that they have a network of friends with whom they may be speaking that you know nothing about.
Sure. Well, Jade, what was it like for you as a teenager? Did the support groups help you?
Yeah, they did, but at first I didn't know what would be going on. But when I got there, they were very reassuring. They were very welcoming and nice. And you didn't have to talk if you didn't want to. They were just there, you know what I mean, to do activities with and stuff. It was nice. They're very helpful.
Good experience for you.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Well, Linda, what are some signs that you might need to get professional help for your child?
Well, one sign of a child crying out for help is hurting themselves, others, or animals. Other times, kids may engage in dangerous activities such as drugs or alcohol, crime, or promiscuity. Sometimes we see a big drop in grades, or kids may become antisocial, isolated, or depressed.
Yeah, and the depression can sometimes be missed by parents. I mean, things like not eating, maybe to the point of losing weight, crying all of the time. All of these are potential signs that something is a little bit more wrong than the typical grieving process.
Right, and I think if the crying and those other signs lead to depression and isolation from friends and family, then that child needs to get some help.
Yeah. Well, Phyllis, what if a grandparent dies?
I think that this is one of the times in the life cycle where the child is one generation removed from the death, and so in some ways, it's if that's the first death they have to experience, that's probably more comforting and less frightening than if it was a parent that died. I think the children have to be involved and should be included, should be able to understand their parents' sadness. And one of the dilemmas we have today in terms of the geography is that children often don't know their grandparents as well as they might have in another time.
So it doesn't really feel
quite as
real,
and they may not understand what they're seeing in their parents.
Right.
And so it becomes very important, again, for the parents to share, to point out that they may be sad, and yes, they may be preoccupied, and it may be a time for the child to learn a little patience and a little empathy.
Right. You know, well, the McKennas have been gracious enough to share their experiences with us, and we now turn to another family's personal hardship, the death of a child. It's the worst possible devastation for a parent and equally difficult for a sibling. The Santoro family lost 10-year-old Paula to complications due to a rare adrenal disease called Cushing syndrome.
This is a still life. She made this at a summer camp, like an art camp, before she, summer before she died. And I think that's pretty cool, you know, how she incorporated those complex lighting, you know, things when she was only like 10 years old. Because when I drew, when I was 10 years old, I drew stick figures and whatnot.
The fact that they were twins and they were boy-girl made them different. Paula was very good with her art. Michael was very good with his music. I guess we see him growing and maturing in his playing ability, his trying new things.
Right after my sister died, I took up something called the sitar, you know, the Indian lute. And in sitar, most of the music is improvised, so you can really kind of use it as an outlet of your emotion. I can really pour out some of my anger and frustration or my, you know, depression.
People have said to me that Michael's much more mature now, but there's also a fragility that he has that's right under the surface. The maturity has kind of been forced on him because he has to prove that he's not been broken by this experience. When the anniversary of Paula's death came around, and he came home and I said, Michael, did anyone talk to you about Paula today? And he said, no, nobody said anything. And that was really very hard for Michael.
I just kind of felt really depressed that day, and almost, you know, like have it, you know, questions were running through my mind, like, has everyone forgot her?
So when the 7th grade came around, Michael wrote his teachers a letter
My sister's death affected many people, and it continues to hurt today. Next Wednesday, when I come to school, I may feel upset, or my temper might spark, or I may not participate in class as much as I should.
So then they talked to him about Paula's death and what things they could say in the classroom. At tonight's 8th grade graduation, they're going to have a moment of silence right before they give everyone else the diplomas. And I'll probably cry because, you know, that's what I do. Everything that happens, the holidays, the graduations, all should have happened with Paula. But they're not.
Ladies and gentlemen, the class of 2005.
There's a distinct difference between losing a great aunt and losing a goldfish and losing a twin sister.
You know, it just must be so hard. Every milestone that Michael goes through, just a reminder to you of your child. Pam, how do you balance your grief while trying to help your son deal with his grief?
Well, it's very hard. It's very difficult. And one of the things that we've done very early on in our grief was to reach out to support programs, one of which was the Compassionate Friends. We were looking really specifically for help for Michael, although it's ended up helping us too, but their sibling program was wonderful. One of the other things that is very helpful to all three of us, my husband, Michael, and I, is that we've set up a foundation in memory of our daughter, of his sister Paula. And one of the things that just heard last week was that we've helped fund a mural in our local library. Paula loved to read, didn't she, Mike? And they're going to incorporate some pieces of her art into this mural in the new children's wing. So that's another way that we can remember her.
And she was quite an artist.
Oh, very
At such
talented.
a young age. I'm so impressed. Yeah, Phyllis, you know, how is it from a child's perspective different losing a sibling compared to losing a parent?
Well, if you lose a sibling in some way, you also lose your future. There's nobody who you'll share your future with who will remember you as a child. You also begin to think of your own vulnerability, because now this is your generation. You could die as well.
Sure.
I think also that one of the dilemmas that a child faces in this is looking at his two parents who are also coping with their grief. They may be reading the same book, but they may not be on the same page. And so there may be certain differences, certain dissent, and the child has to learn to recognize that this is not him, this is their grief, and that they're all together in this, but how you come together is really very difficult.
And it may be even more intense, these feelings, when there's the loss of a twin. You know, there's that connection.
That's even more.
That's even more
so
intense. And Linda, the schools can play a really important role in helping children grieve, can't they?
Yes, schools can be strong advocates for the grieving child. In many ways, by providing simple interventions, such as allowing the child to choose a safe person or a place that they can go to, because often they're overwhelmed with feelings when they least expect it. Having a designated time to call home and assigning a class buddy. Schools can create communication tools so that everyone in the school knows this is a grieving child, and record permanent information about the current death and also previous losses. They can educate the staff on what's common for grieving children, including components of impulsivity, distractibility, inability to concentrate, and hyperactivity that can be misinterpreted as attention deficit and learning disabled issues. And they can respect the grieving child, as Michael's school did when they acknowledged his sister Paula at graduation.
Yeah, and that can make such a big difference. You know, Michael, you've been through a lot. You've been through an awful lot, more than we would like for someone as young as you. But what have you learned through all of this?
Well, I've learned that life is fragile, and that
Don't take it for granted.
yeah,
you know?
don't take things for granted, and you know, live your life day by day.
Yeah. Do you think about your sister?
All the time.
All the time.
You know.
Yeah. I know that it's been a difficult road for you, and that you've had to deal with a lot of feelings, a lot of emotions that can be hard to express to other people. You know, it's hard to know unless you're actually in it what it's been like. But I also know that you've got a wonderful mom here and that you're going to do very well. If you'd like to learn more about how to help a grieving child, and check out these books by our experts. Never Too Young to Know by Phyllis Silverman, Children Also Grieve by Linda Goldman, and you can also contact the Compassionate Friends at their website, which is compassionatefriends.com, and their phone number is 877-969-0010. And check out the Dougie Center, and their website is dougie.org. The phone number is 866-775-5683, or contact your local community mental health center. And I want to thank all of my guests for being here and sharing their insights, and we will see you next time on Keeping Kids Healthy.
For more information on today's topics, visit keepingkidshealthy.org.